the opening of the unofficial golf season next week for the Masters. What's Bob and the crew going to do?
You know, Howard, I was thinking that yesterday. The next week or so is going to be sunny and 10 and 11 with some, measurable wind. A lot of golf courses, like public golf courses, would probably be ready to go within the next 2 or 3 weeks, eh?
For sure.
And none of them will be opening. Sad.
Here's how they in the company that I work for, Club Link, the way they measure it, if someone told me this last night on our little men's night Zoom call, if you get 8 days in a row of a certain temperature, they will open their Club Link courses, and in some years that's the first or second week of April. Boone, can you not hear us?
I thought they got a big fat guy to stand on a green, and if he sunk in, then it wasn't time to open
That's
yet.
right. That's what they do. They get a big fat guy, and as long as he's stable. Hey, I can see you, Boone, but Boone can't. Boone can't hear us.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, Mr. Technology.
Mr. Technology Computer Wizard. Look at him.
I know he's just staring at us. Hello.
Anyway, we must proceed until he figures it out. We'll have to teach him at some point.
Yeah, Phil, can you deal with him? Because I can see him texting us. The reason we were going to talk to Boone is he broke his wrist.
Yeah,
That's
fell
really
off his
funny.
bike.
What's that?
Fell off his bike, broke his wrist, smashed his head. Really, serious stuff. Could have been a lot worse.
Maybe the reason he can't figure out the Zoom meeting is because his dinger is all banged up.
Right.
I can't wait for him to, when he listens back to the show, I can't wait for him to hear this riveting part.
So where are we? Now they're talking 12 weeks.
Yes.
12 more. Well, that would be City of Toronto, but I'm sure everyone else will follow suit. But that takes us to Canada Day, pretty much.
Yeah, the end of June. Now, I heard the press conference yesterday and it'll be interesting to run this by Tony Clement because he was in the health ministry. And yesterday, who was that speaking? It was the Ontario minister of, not the minister of the, what's it called?
The public health
Yes.
officer.
Public Health Agency of Canada.
And
what was Phil? Say that again, Phil.
Public Health Agency of Canada, Dr. Tam.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Have you figured it out, Mike?
Yes. How you guys doing?
Good, man. We got to get you a better microphone because that sounds like your air traffic control.
Okay.
I can call back from my phone if you like.
No, it's fine.
Oh, no.
Now.
It's better than a phone. Howard, finish that point before we move on to Mike.
Well, listening to the press conference, she was very, very adamant and very serious that, these are the steps we have to take. And she kept referencing, as I think John Tory did, that we don't want this to be another Italy. And in order to ensure that, they're shutting down even more things for 12 weeks. But as you and I were talking before the show, there are going to be some businesses that aren't coming back from this.
No, we went for a drive yesterday. Is that allowed? Should we be doing that? Anyway, we went for a drive. We drove into the city and around and back, and it's scary. I was down by the beaches and then up Woodbine and along Danforth, and just everything shut down. And a lot of those are mom and pop things, especially along the Danforth. How they're going to survive is just, you just can't imagine. And if this is going on another 12 weeks, what's the Danforth say going to look like in July and August? Of a lot of those businesses can't come back, don't survive.
No, I agree. I was telling you last week, walking even on the Queensway, I must have passed 10 or 15 mom and pop, like little pizza places, a Korean barbecue, a dry cleaner. And listening to John Tory this morning, the Restaurant Association of Canada is doing what they can. But as he said, in the 75-year history the association has been in existence, they've never seen anything like what they're seeing now from their members and employees.
And let's be honest, as this thing ramps up, the death toll climbs, people are probably going to be a little less inclined even to go and get takeout, really. So I don't know what the future holds.
Well, let's get back to this in a bit with Tony, because there's so many aspects to it, and our hearts, and I speak for you. You know what? We're all thinking about these people in this industry and many others, and you just feel for them because, a lot of people along the Queensway I've gotten to know in the 3.5 years I've lived here, and I don't know if some of them will be back when this is over. The problem, what you just identified, though, is when it's over, it's not a single day, because it's going to be one of those things where it slowly comes back, but a lot of people will stay away from takeout in restaurants for a while, even when it's perceived as safe.
Yes, I know.
Hey, Booner, let's get right to Boone. Boone, what's going on, son?
Good. How do I sound now?
Worse,
but that's fine.
Oh,
now
really?
you've got,
okay.
Yeah, because you've got two panels open. You've got to shut one of them.
Well, I muted the other one.
Okay,
but I
well,
can
you're
go
fine.
back to the other one.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Now, Toronto Mike, of course, a legendary podcaster and behind the scenes BTS at H&F Radio for years, now took over a few months ago from our good friend Amanda Barker. And all of a sudden, on a note the other day, something about, I broke my wrist, I'm going to the hospital. Look
So
at
I'm
her.
holding up the cast for you guys, but yeah, I busted my wrist pretty good. I heard Fred tease it a bit yesterday, but the quick story, because I know you got important weather to get to, is I'm biking along in the bike lane of a street called Royal York, not far from you, Howard, and a little boy and girl, like, I don't know, she's 7, he's like 10. They each are walking a dog on the sidewalk. Her dog starts barking at me and juts onto Royal York and is going after me, and I can see she's struggling with the leash. And I have this moment of, oh my God, this dog's going to fly into my spokes or something. And I do this hard left that I wouldn't normally do on a wet road, and I lost control and I tumble over the bike. And I don't know if any of you saw the pictures of the helmet, but the helmet split in two. I've never seen this before, but the helmet literally split in two. The good news is I had a CT scan and it came back as normal as it ever was, so I'm okay. But the wrist is busted up and I'm in a cast for 6 weeks.
isn't that something? Although your record's been pretty good, hasn't it, Mike? You became a cyclist how many years ago, and this is really your first big accident, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the first time in my life I had to wear a cast because of a bike accident. I've always, my previous casts have been from sporting injuries, but never on a bike. So if you do the numbers, like, I'm good for like a cast every 80,000 kilometers.
That's not bad.
Like that.
When it happened and you tumbled over the bike and, if you fell hard enough to split the helmet, that's a pretty good fall. What was the reaction of these kids and their dogs?
Okay, so the initial, I hit the ground and right away I feel nauseous and my vision's cloudy. And my first thought is it's a head injury, but I look over at, so I collect myself to make sure, okay, I'm alive, I'm able to stand now. The kids look like they've seen a ghost. They both had this, I never forget this face, like the girl and the boy, they both look traumatized, like, the guy was saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry, sir, I'm so sorry, because they see me take this hard fall in front of them because of their dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the girl and I just see my daughters, right? We all have daughters. Well, not you, Phil. Well, sort of. But that's another story.
Yeah, Phil has daughters, trust me.
That's right. But I look at her and I just looked in the eyes and I said, it's not your fault. And then I just walk onto a side street to collect myself. But I just didn't want her to carry this. Like, I didn't want her to be like carrying this for the next how many years of her life.
Even though it was clearly her fault. And you might want to think about litigation, Mike.
Well, Lauren Honigman, who I think you guys know, he wrote me a note and said, did you get the contact info? And I don't know what the plan would have been if I had, but I did not get any contact info.
Okay.
How old were they? Did you say?
She was like 6 or 7, maybe 7. He's like 10.
Oh.
Like too young to me. Too young. She was too young to be handling that dog by herself, I think. But
Well, yeah.
Also too young to blame you for it, because if they were adults, probably with the dog in a situation like that, thinking of potential liability, they probably would have tried to blame you.
probably, yeah, probably.
Listen, man, we're glad you're okay. Tell us quickly before we get to the important weather. Tell us about the experience of going to the hospital, having a CT scan, getting a cast on, going back, the fracture clinic. What was that like in the time of the virus?
So that was, as I'm trying to get myself home, all I'm thinking is like, I cannot go to a hospital. Like Monica doesn't even want me going to No Frills. Like I cannot go into a hospital in this time of a pandemic. And this is my thought. I literally got home and I'm still shaking. I'm really in immense pain. That's what the nausea was. It was the pain of breaking my wrist. And I said, oh, let me ice this and sleep on it and see how it is in a couple of days. This was my great genius plan.
That's right.
And Monica looked at it. It looked deformed and lumpy, and it was so swollen. And she said she did some magic trick where she got me a doctor on a web call. Like she did this thing, and I suddenly in like 20 minutes I was talking to a doctor and showing a doctor my wrist. And the doctor said, I'm faxing this rec thing to St. Joe's Emergency. You have to go. And I said, I don't want to go to a hospital. It's a pandemic. I don't want to risk the family and everything. And he said, but you got to go, or this will heal on a misaligned, and you will have a deformed hand. So I do it because I have to do it. And I'm super careful. I don't touch anything. I never touch my face. And I'm sanitizing every 8 minutes. And it's the best emergency experience I've ever had because there was nobody there. And I just ran through the system, CT scan, tetanus shot, X-ray, results. Because firstly, anyone who thinks they have COVID is not going there because they're going to a COVID testing center. Activity across the board is down. No one's playing hockey. Nobody's playing baseball. And nobody's getting drunk at a bar and stumbling out on Parkdale or whatever. So there's less accidents. Like there's just less stuff. And finally, nobody's going to emergency unless they absolutely have to.
No, that's a good
so
point.
If you add those three things up, there's nobody in emergency right now.
So now's the time to break a bone, is what you're saying.
Bingo.
Fred, Fred, I think I think the takeaway is there's never been a better time to been a better time to break your wrist.
I think I'll break me one today.
Oh, nice. Can you help me do it? Hey, Mike, we'll figure out a better system because we can kind of hear you. It would be great to hear you on your, on your microphones there in the TDMS NBC studios. But I'm really glad you're okay. And, well, you heal well, young man, and safe travels and all that stuff.
Yeah, we'll work on the mic, and Mike will be back on Humble and Fred. You guys are awesome. Congrats on your success. Peace and love.
All right, brother. There's Toronto Mike Boone. Go check it out. The Toronto Mike podcast as well. Mike is in charge of, I don't know, a half dozen other huge broadcasters. All right, you just disconnect now.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Congrats on our successes.
Huge success.
Don't? Huh?
Yeah, we're hugely successful.
Yeah.
Dan Duran is here. I can see.
Yes, I am.
Dan Duran?
I've joined the Zoom meeting.
Yes, you have. Well, congratulations to you, Dan.
Thank you. On my success?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the evolution of the Dan Duran bit is such that at first there was enthusiasm. Hey, do you want to join us? Create your own Dan Duran weather song. And we said, hey, it would be cool if Dan did that. And Dan literally has such little interest in this that now he's not even bothering saying, hey, I didn't get a chance to do it. So I think that's cool.
Well, thank you. I did work on it a little bit.
Okay, yes.
I managed to get the system working a little bit better than it was because the challenge is technical for me.
Okay.
It's not so much, just fine tuning the studios and everything else, which I've been doing lately. I talked to you a couple of days ago about there's way more voice people now. Well, there's no business going on in the business, right? Because everybody's isolating. So it's all it's all from remote, just like you guys are doing and have been doing for such a long time. Now all the voice people are having to get up and running doing it.
Yes.
So there is a big push to get everybody tuned up, and people are submitting their voice files and giving an accounting of their home studio systems in order to still play in the game, so to speak.
Wait a minute. All that explanation is to say why you haven't done a 15-second gorky little jingle?
Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah.
That was,
Like seriously, even I'm not technically inclined. I think even I'd be able to come up with a 15-second jingle by tomorrow.
No, I don't. You know, here's
it's your turn then.
No. This is the best. No.
Your turn.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've literally created a bit for you, and it's now day 4. It doesn't matter. Here's the good news, though, Dan. There is a Toronto swing artist. She's a very fine singer. And she has not only done one Dan Duran weather song. Her name is Alex Pangman. I hope that's how you pronounce her name, Alex Pangman. And she has done not one Dan Duran weather song, Fred, but 2 of them. So, Freddie, here's what I'll do. I'll just turn the mic off. You guys can hear it. So here's Dan Duran weather song, the slow version.
Dan Duran weather, weather Dan Duran. Dan Duran weather, weather Dan Duran.
Now, isn't that beautiful?
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, and Alex, who is obviously an accomplished artist, she had time to do a second one. Please listen.
Dan Duran weather, weather Dan Duran. Dan Duran weather, weather Dan Duran. Dan Duran weather, weather Dan Duran. Dan Duran weather, weather Dan Duran.
Yeah, she's going to have time to do a whole Dan Duran weather album, and you're fumbling around talking about remote studios. And I don't know what I'm going to have time. Listen, man.
Well, that's so much better. I had the music queued up, so
Wow.
now I don't have to. That's fantastic. Well, thank you.
I will say this, though.
What's that?
Dan Duran weather, weather Dan Duran.
This is really starting to grow on me. It's got a real Bill Evans vibe to it, and I dig it.
Yeah.
I mean,
see, it's growing. It's not as fast as you wanted it to grow, but it's growing.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. How was the sunshine for you yesterday? Did it spark a good mood in you?
Oh, yeah.
That didn't sound very resounding.
I'm waiting for Fred.
Oh, no. Well, to back up a bit, I'm sorry. I had myself on mute there and forgot. I think Dan has decided that first song is enough. That's all he's going to do.
No, I know.
You know?
That's fine.
That's all he's been commissioned for. But that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, to the weather.
Yeah. No, I know. Listen, we both know Dan, and I think what we're seeing is the evolution of procrastination. This is
Really? Is that what we're seeing?
Oh, I think we are. Oh, no, because, Dan, I know you. The first couple of days, you're like, hey, I didn't get a chance, and you're texting me. Today, nothing. So, I know internally you've given up, and that's fine. It's fine.
That's not true.
Well, actually, I envy you because the thing is, I sit around here after this show all day thinking of things to do, and I can't really fill my day other than sitting in front of the television too much. So I envy the fact that you're so busy you can't do the 15-second jingle.
Yeah. Well, listen.
Yeah. Well, I am busy.
You are. I know you are, buddy. Listen, and I want for the record.
Yeah.
For the record, I'm giving you a pass on this.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we didn't even have to go through all this because you could have just said, hey, we've got a submission today. You didn't have to mention anything about this, did you?
No, you're right.
Because we have success.
You know what? You're like Trump. It's my fault. It's Obama's fault. It's Obama.
Okay.
You're right.
So
okay.
Does Alex Pangman, does she get access to the Zoom meeting then soon?
She should.
Isn't that the contest?
She's very talented.
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe if she gets access, we can see if she can do weather.
Wow. This is really progressed.
Oh,
hasn't
yeah.
it? Yes.
It's gotten ugly. Listen, dude, we got to go.
Okay. Let me tell you about the weather since we're talking about weather right now. You know what? It's the next little while is going to be above seasonal. There was, I think, even on the one of the Hummel and Fred feed, somebody's asking about winter tires. I wouldn't take the winter tires off just yet. Probably wait for because the temperature is not quite where it should be. I think they say like 5 days where the temperature is 7 degrees in the time that you do most of your driving.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Well, no, I'm being legit here. I know there's a temperature sort of threshold for changing your tire, but I also thought it was, hey, the chances of it being below freezing now are pretty low or lower.
Yeah. Well, in a week or so from now, the temperatures could drop down a little bit below, especially when you're outside of Toronto. But I'll give you a couple things. One is that a lot of insurance companies, if you get a discount on your insurance because you're wearing winter tires on your car,
yes,
that I think it lasts till April 30th. So May 1st is the changeover time.
All right, legit.
For that part. Yeah. The other part of it is that they want 5 days at 7 degrees as the minimum temperature.
All right.
With the winters and the summer tires, the reason you don't want to have winter tires continuously on through the summer is because the rubber is made to handle colder temperatures, and in warmer temperatures it wears much faster.
All right.
So, but there is a crossover time for both, the all seasons and the winter tires.
Are you being sponsored by Firestone right now, or are you?
Yeah. Looking for some way to make money on it.
I know. I know you are.
So if I can, the next little while is going to be about tires. So, if you're a tire seller,
listen, nothing would make me happier if you sold your own sponsorship.
Okay. So, anyway,
hang on.
My next door neighbor professes to be a little bit of a psychic, and it's interesting. Over the years, she's hit on a few things. She claims April 10th or 11th, major snowstorm. All right.
She just came up with that.
Yeah, the other day. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Well, it's possible. We'll see, this is the month of April, and there has been many times where we've had snow in April. So you want to be prepared for that. Just saying. Yeah. Okay. So, but for the next few days, I mean, into about Tuesday or Wednesday, the temperatures are going to be pretty fantastic. Next Thursday or so, the temperatures are going to drop a little below seasonal, but for the next 5-6 days, we're going to be above seasonal. So that's awesome. And we're looking for mainly sunny day tomorrow, mainly sunny on Saturday, little chance of shower on Sunday, but we're really not looking for a lot of that would be overnight from Saturday night into Sunday, and that's maybe a millimeter of rain or so somewhere in there. But the rest of the time, it's just a mix of sun and cloud until we get into next week. So look forward to that. As far as today goes, we're looking for a high of around 12 degrees, pretty much 10 to 12 degrees through the entire GTA and larger regions. So it's going to be a nice, mainly sunny day, a few cloudy periods in the afternoon. A great day.
Hey, so Fred.
Get out there and enjoy it.
Freddie.
Yes, Howard.
Maybe April showers will bring Dan his goofy little jingle in May. Maybe that's what we can look forward to.
Oh, we can only hope. But Howard, come on. That's a little too soon.
No, it's true. Dan Duran weather brought to you by some tire company in Peterborough. All right, we'll be back. Tony Clement, former Minister of Ontario. Thank you, Dan. He's going to hang out with us, checking in again about the crisis, the virus, locking the province down, and so many other topics. Come and hang with us if you can. It's Humble and Fred Radio.
So tell me what's wrong with feeling I'm a flower, you're the bee.
Yeah, these are definitely interesting times. The former Minister of Health for Ontario and a regular Humble and Fred contributor. I don't know. It's got to be. At first I thought, well, this has got to be a huge come down for him, but I get the feeling Tony Clement is a bit of a Humble and Fred, fan. And we'll talk to him about that, his obsession with us, and, of course, these troubled times. But first, Fred, the Chamber plan.
Yes, and through these troubled times, the Chamber plan is right on top of it. Go to chamberplan.ca. One of the first things you're going to see now is a banner that asks you to visit their COVID-19 page for information and updates. This is the type of service they offer. And besides this, the teledoc system, where you can actually, as a subscriber, as a member, you can get in touch with a doctor over, a video hookup with a doctor. So before you even leave your house, you sort of more or less know where you stand, whether you should actually visit one of those emergency rooms. Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits, chamberplan.ca. You can go there, get a free quote. You can see what it would cost for your small business to become part of this: medical, dental, travel, as I said, teledoc, so many services under the umbrella. A great way to provide security for your small business. Chamberplan.ca.
I didn't tell you this, but GFR, who is a consultant now, I mean, she has always been a consultant, but, she's back in the consultancy business. She left her gig at the museum a few months ago, and she just signed up for the Chamber plan. I mean, she saw what I went through in Phoenix, and the travel insurance alone, when people can travel again, is an amazing component. And of course, our friends at CDN Technologies are busy, not too busy to help you set up your home office or to make sure in your home you have the kind of security, whether it's backup and recovery, IT security, IT services, or IT support. They can come on your computer. What is that thing? Is it called Teamwork, Phil?
Remote desktop or teamwork. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's amazing. You can trust CDN Technologies to make sure that whatever's going on with your computer or with your network, that it's safe, that hackers can't hold you for ransom. That's a real thing. CDN Technologies, Barb loves you to know the number. It's 905-542-9759. And when you call that number, our friend, former Humble and Fred producer, Sean, what's his name? Sean Sargent. Oh, that's funny. Georgetown Sean. He'll be picking up the phone. I blanked on his name for a second. I just did.
Welcome to your 60s.
Yeah, no kidding. And now welcome to our program, a Humble and Fred fan and former Minister of Health, Tony Clement. How are you, sir?
I am fine, sir. Hope all is well with your listenership, too.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we do as well. And how are things in the Clement bunker?
They're good. My kid. I have 2 of my 3 kids with us, and I don't think they're too impressed with all this time with the family. But we're making do. We're making do.
So, how old are the kids that are with you?
They're young adults, so 21 and 27.
So they're sort of sequestered with you. That's it's them with the parents and not going out anywhere. Wow.
Not going out anywhere. And it's one of these things about family life, right? You always want more time with the kids, and now they're not too impressed.
Well, especially when they come back. I've got daughters that age. I can't even imagine, this lockdown with my 22-year-old. I think one of us would be dead. More likely me. Let's talk about what's going on yesterday. The health officer. What's the official? Phil, you had it. The city
medical officer of health.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes, she came out.
Well, Tony would know.
Tony, you'd know.
Chief medical officer.
Chief medical officer of health came out and said 12 more weeks. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that the numbers make that required. There's no question that we're into the long haul a little bit now. If you look at the increases in cases and the threats to seniors' homes and other things, they're erring on that side of caution. Yeah, it's going to be tough. Like I really worry, about what is the debate. I've had this discussion on your show before. We will have a debate on when to take our foot off the pedal. When are we going to have that debate? It's coming, because what is victory here? Is victory no new cases for 3 weeks in a row, which is what one medical officer said? I don't foresee that happening anytime soon, and at some point we do have to go back to work. So I just wonder whether people will exhibit patience for an entire 3-month period.
So when they said 12 weeks, was that the city of Toronto or the province as a whole? Which leads to the next question: what's the use of having one without the other?
It was the city. Okay. When Mayor Tory had his presser yesterday on that. So this is also part of the problem. People are starting to get mixed messages. You've got the federal government communicating, you've got the provincial government, you got the BC government, the Quebec government, and then you've got the municipalities. And they're starting to say slightly different things. The main message is the same: stay at home, protect your loved ones, etc. But there are differences of degree and definitions that are starting to confuse people, I would suggest.
There's so many things I wanted to ask you, and then just before I opened my mouth, I forgot all of them. But I will say this. Fred and I were having this discussion, not only today, but in other days. Unlike other major societal shifts, what you just mentioned is we won't know the day when all is well. And that's the problem with things like the restaurant industry. We were talking about that. All of a sudden, it'll be, okay, 12 weeks is up. Now, do we go back or do... I think the problem with this is there won't be a day where the all clear sounds.
Yeah, and this is... can I use a historical analogy? I hope you don't mind if I...
Please.
I've been thinking about this in post-war Britain. Labour leader Clement Attlee defeated Winston Churchill at the end of the war. Churchill had won the war, and he was defeated by a labor leader because his promise was, yeah, we won the war, but we need education, we need healthcare, etc. And the voters went for that. Then he fell into disfavor because they had all these rationings going on in the UK for years and years. You couldn't buy butter, you couldn't buy chocolate, meat was rationed. And Attlee, was trying to be a good first minister, and his message to Britons was, we have to do more. We have to collectively do more so that we will have a better day tomorrow. And so rationing has to continue. And Britons went for that for a while, and then they got tired of it, quite frankly. And Churchill got back into power by saying, you know what, it's time to have some fun. Let's party. And I think that we're going to go through, this is my prediction. It's just, Tony Clement Incorporated prediction, but I think we're going to go through the same psychology here. Everybody is the solidarity now. Everybody's rah, let's flatten the curve. After like 19 million days of public health officials saying, let's flatten the curve, people are going to get tired of it. I can see, you saw that on Sunday in Toronto in the public parks already.
Mm-hmm. Flattening the curve, or as you mentioned earlier, no cases for how many days. In our society, that's probably going to be impossible. I mean, to have that happen in the next 2 or 3 months and then proceed as usual. I saw it yesterday. I mean, the streets are bare, but still there's all, on CTV News last night, they showed a parking lot down near the beach. It was packed. So all those people are milling around. So the idea of totally eliminating this thing in the near future in the next few months is crazy. So we're going to have to return on some level, everybody wearing masks or some other rules and regulations.
Well, and just before you, to comment on that, Tony, and it's only going to get worse when it gets warmer. I've mentioned this a bunch of times. We've all been cooped up here. It's winter, and Canadians in general, come May and June, they're going to want to get outside.
Exactly right, and we saw that last Sunday where we had it was 16 degrees in the city or whatever. people just went they went outside. That's what we do as Canadians after our 5-month-long winter. So there's going to be a lot of challenges on keeping, and I know John Tory was trying to be a stern taskmaster yesterday, and Justin Trudeau said yesterday that it's up to us in our discipline to defeat this thing. And I guess he's right on one level, but I don't trust the Chinese numbers, but China still has new cases. And they've just made the decision. We're opening up schools. We're opening up businesses because they're in month 4 or 5. And so even though they still get, 4 or 5 dozen cases a day, they're saying, you know what, we gotta move forward.
And
that's what they're doing.
Hearing you say this, and now a week has gone by or 2 weeks has gone by since Donald Trump was talking about getting the economy raring to go by Easter Sunday, a beautiful day. But in a way now we're starting to see that at some point we're going to have to go back into some version of normalcy. Fred mentioned masks. We were talking about that yesterday. I think you're going to see that, Tony. I think you're going to see a Canadian, North American society where people are still taking precautions months from now.
Yeah, that's it. And so then the debate is, what are those precautions? Because we do have to work for a living at some point. And this is all fun using our technology from home, but it's going to reach a plateau of utility, right? So I think for a lot of businesses, they're either going to die or live. If there's no end date, they're going to die. And so that's the issue. And that has consequences as well. It has consequences in terms of suicides, drug abuse, domestic violence. All these things are problematic when we're in this stasis of non-economy and staying at home.
Okay, let's play this game and it's conceivable because you could have been Tony Clement. You're the Prime Minister. You're in the Situation Room today, or whatever we call that in Canada. What would your game plan be? What would you be saying to those around you from this standpoint?
Well, and what Justin Trudeau has said is that he whatever the public health officials say, that's the advice he takes, and I respect that. But we don't elect public health officials. We elect politicians. We elect prime ministers, and so part of the leadership has got to be this interplay with public health to come up with policies that make sense. And I said this on your show weeks ago. Part of it is you got to have credibility with the public. And I think part of the problem was at the beginning of this in February, the Trudeau and the rest of the gang said, no, we're not going to do any screening at airports. We're not going to cut off flights from stricken areas because the public health say that doesn't have an impact. And that goes against we can argue about the statistics and the science behind that, but most people look at that and go, that's BS, and we shouldn't be taking in flights from stricken areas. So it's a question of establishing your credibility. If the Prime Minister is going to ask us to do extraordinary things, he's got to be credible in doing so. So that's my advice to whoever is Prime Minister.
Now, we'd like to talk about how crazy things are at the White House. But online, you see a lot of people are not entirely thrilled with the way that our government has handled it. That being said, say what you want about our Prime Minister or Doug Ford or John Tory. There's no sense. At least you get a sense of some comfort that they're not talking about them being number one on Facebook. In your life as a politician and as a guy, have you ever, and you're a history guy, could you have ever imagined a president talking about his television ratings while they're purchasing 100,000 body bags?
Yeah, he the answer is no. I've never experienced that. And he breaks all the rules. He always has. And, there was some expectation when he was sworn into office that he would change into more presidential mode. He's never done that. And I guess you could say he's true to his brand. It's not everyone's cup of tea, obviously. And sometimes, in this case, he's been dragged kicking and screaming into reality because, his messages were home by Easter, everything's going to be fine by Easter. And then the reality crept in, and now his messaging is very somber. So that's Trump. I mean, I can't explain it. It's a unique phenomenon politically, and there are some copycats around the world. Brazil's Bolsonaro is like that. He's another populist election winner. AMLO in Mexico, who was a leftist populist, he was dismissing the COVID-19 virus until very recently. So we've seen a lot of cases around the world where the leadership did not take this seriously.
Okay, so Trump didn't take it seriously at the beginning. You were talking about Trudeau, to get back to Canada. Not stopping flights, not stopping people from coming in from hotspots. How much of that do you think was political correctness? Deep down, he knew that might be the way to go, but he was afraid of the pushback, because, hey, this is Canada. We tend to be politically correct and afraid to make that type of move. How much of it do you think was that?
I think that's part of it. I think what happened was the advice he was getting from public health accorded to his own philosophical underpinnings.
Okay.
So he was getting the advice that this will have no impact, so don't do it, and that was what he wanted to hear. That's what I think happened.
Tony Clement is with us. He is the former health minister of Ontario. I think he was second or third assistant prime minister at one time. I'm not 100% sure. I think it worked like this: if the prime minister got a 5-minute penalty, then Tony was allowed to talk to the ref for any minor infractions. Is that
well? If there was a plane crash,
okay.
I was the third designated survivor.
Were you really?
Yeah.
That series was pretty good for the first season, but then it kind of got weird.
Hey, Tony, how much of you right now is glad you're not in politics or part of a government that is in the middle of this? Does the politician in you say, I'd love to be in there and roll up my sleeves and get at it? Or, boy, I'm glad I don't have to deal with this.
I toggle between the two, to be honest. So, the part of me wants to be part of the action in the sense that I think I could bring something in terms of my experience to the table. And there have been other governments that have approached me around the world for my expertise. But I know the toll it takes. It's not a fun time to be in government. You will age prematurely because of this. You'll develop high blood pressure, or there'll be impacts on your personal health. I guarantee you. So I'm sure that our politicians are going through hell, and it's going to have an impact on their personal health, unfortunately.
Just before we let you go, just want to pivot just back to Trump for a second. And as a guy like yourself, a student of the game, you've been in politics at a very high level. You've dealt with presidents. If there were a candidate on the Democrat side that wasn't 100, could this crisis be the demise of Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think the polling is fairly steady for him right now in terms of handling the crisis. So if you hate Donald Trump, you hate the way he's handling it. If you like Donald Trump, you don't care what the media is saying about him. So we're still in that kind of world in America. It's I don't know what to say. If Biden steps up his game, I think he's got a real chance to go after Trump. It's just a question of how you see Biden. Is he up for this, or is he just too far gone, age wise and in terms of mental acuity? That's the open question, because he has the ability to bring together all the Democrats because he's a centrist, and even the radical Democrats want to get rid of Trump. But is that going to be enough to overturn what Trump has? So I think we have to wait and see how he performs as we get closer to the fall, and then we'll see whether I'd say one thing, Humble, if I could. I know we see all these polls. 52% of Americans disagree with Trump. 55% don't like Trump. Whatever. 55% like the Democratic choice, whoever that is. That's totally irrelevant in American politics. It is, just for your listeners, because that's an America-wide number, and that includes New York and California. New York and California are not going to vote Republican under any circumstances. in the foreseeable future. So you take the two most populous states out of the equation and then look at the numbers.
Yeah.
And then Trump is a lot more competitive in that situation.
And there's that whole closet vote too thing. There's a lot of people in America would never ever admit that they like Trump, but they can't wait to vote for him. And I think Stephen Harper had a bit of that here in Canada as well.
Yeah, and that's true of some conservatives. Like that happened in the UK as well, and in Ontario, Doug Ford. Same thing happened.
I think that happens a lot, in the metro areas where you may not want to at a cocktail party say I support Doug Ford or Stephen Harper, but when you go home, considering your family and your tax situation, you're going to vote for the guy. You just won't talk about it at a cool party on the Danforth. Tony, thanks very much, my brother. Now,
right,
when those governments call and they say, Minister Clement, can you help us? Do you say no? I'm working with Humble and Fred at the highest level.
I try to balance the priorities, but you're my priority at 7:30 in the morning.
Well, we appreciate it. We know you like us. We like you. Coming together, a meeting of the minds. Well, one mind and two half minds.
Are you still the Honorable Tony Clement? Do you keep that when you're out of politics?
Yeah, I get that for life. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, okay. See you, Your Honor.
All right, Your Honor. Thank you.
That's better than what my wife calls me. So thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We appreciate
Okay,
it.
guys.
There's Tony Clement hanging out with his kids in the Clement compound. Next time we get Tony on, we got to ask him, have you got any virus recipes you want to share? Because Rachel made a vegetable medley last night.
Really?
Yes, beautiful. Nothing but vegetables. And I made crispy tofu, Fred.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty good, actually.
Why?
I don't know, just for something different. Phil, have you ever made tofu?
You could just buy the crispy tofu and make it more crispy.
Well, I made it myself, Phil.
How crispy?
Really crispy. You get firm tofu, cut it into cubes, really, really press the water out of it. Then you toss it in some soy sauce, salt and pepper, olive oil, and cornstarch. Then you bake it in the oven, and so it becomes kind of crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. And, of course, tofu takes on whatever flavor you give it. And so, you know what? It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
And it's a good source of protein.
Yeah, man.
Well, isn't that something? I don't, I liked, is it some Chinese dishes, right, have tofu in them? And I often, when I bite into the tofu, I don't mind it.
Well, if you've
I've never cooked it as a mainer.
If you've had miso soup at sushi, those little cubes, that's floating tofu.
Yeah.
Phil,
nice.
what do you do with tofu?
Well, we usually get the soft tofu, put it in some pork broth, and off you go. That's it. That's all you need.
Can you imagine the meals at the Hong household during this lockdown? They've got to be amazing.
Well, remember, we had a meal at the Hong household, and it was delicious.
Unbelievable. Those were simpler times when it took... Well, how long did it take us? Like 5 years before Phil let us in his home?
It took 5 years to make the food.
Okay.
That's right.
Well, listen,
What
man.
was it? Was it chicken we had that day? It wasn't a bat, was it? No.
Hainan chicken. Hainan chicken. Mom's famous for chicken.
Are you sure, Phil? Did you feed us bat?
I had bat once. It was terrible.
All right.
Bat wings.
Wow.
I said had some buffalo bat wings.
So, when we went to the Hongs, we're pretty sure they gave us bat for dessert. Okay. We got to take a break here and switch gears. We're going to talk about, along with everything else, all the major sports, golf is shut down. In an unprecedented manner, Bob Weeks, the editor of Score Golf magazine and Score Golf TV, will be our guest when we come back. It's Humble and Fred Radio.
This is our life.
Good to be with you in Southern Ontario on Funny 820, of course, live every day and around the country, around the world at humbleandfredradio.com. Here's a nice Hamilton boy, Fred. Is Ian still live in that area?
Oh, yes. He still lives in that area and still does a lot of concerts and little venues in the Niagara area.
Yeah, always a good friend of the show, Ian Thomas.
Yes, he's appeared more than once. He's been on the show.
Yeah, and very funny, too. Dave Thomas's brother. Anyway, coming up later, we'll talk to you about Clear Air Solutions and how the Aegis Microbe Shield is helping to make your home and workspaces more clean and disinfected. But first, let's welcome, for the last 5 years, the one of the lead analysts for the TSN golf coverage and for years the editor of Score Golf Magazine. Bob Weeks, how are you this morning, my friend?
I'm doing very well, all things considered.
All things considered. And, of course, like everything else, whether it's the NHL, NBA, in all the years you've been covering golf, not only is it unprecedented times for society, but I can't remember ever, championships being canceled and postponed. And, of course, historically, the Masters being basically shelved for the first time, I think, since World War II. Am I not correct?
That's right. Yeah, it's it's a strange time. It seems like every day we're finding out about another tournament that might be postponed. Looks like the Masters might be played in November. There were some rumors last night that the Open Championship, sometimes known as the British Open, was going to be canceled, but that's been put on pause right now. We still don't even know the fate of the RBC Canadian Open, which is supposed to be played in Toronto early in June, but I got to think that one's going to get pulled as well pretty soon.
Well, they just canceled. It's Fred, by the way, Bob. Thanks for being on the show. They just canceled Wimbledon, so I mean that gives you an idea of the mindset over on that side of the pond.
Yeah, that was stunning to me that they had already just sort of said, okay, that's it, we're canceling it. I know a lot of the major golf tournaments, they're all working together behind the scenes, and they're all trying to find dates in the fall that make sense. And someone suggested, why don't we have a month of majors, just week after week, have all 4 majors in 1 month? Mm-hmm. It's a difficult time for everything, and I guess the only good thing is when we get through this and on the other side, I'm not sure where that's going to be. Man, there's going to be a deluge of big sporting events. I don't know how we're going to survive. We'll be quarantined anyway, just watching them all on television.
Well, you think about it, they're going to have to, in this year, forget the 4 majors plus the Players' Championship. There was also the Olympics, and also this is a Ryder Cup year. And when all the other sports, if we eventually get them all together, it's going to be a couple of months of people just, as you say, staying inside, going back between the NBA Finals, the Masters. Do you think that's possible in terms of, just back to Augusta for a second, because most people, if you're a golf fan, after the Masters, they basically close the club for the summer because they don't play it when it's too hot. So what would the conditions be in November for an Augusta hosted Masters?
Well, that's a big part of what's going on. That's why originally they were looking at a date in September, but the course is closed from May till October traditionally, and it's as you said, it's just too hot to grow grass. They can't really do that down there, and so they're trying to push it as deep into the year and still make it weather-wise playable. To try and keep the conditions going. But, it's going to be weird because when we think of watching the Masters, you think of springtime, you think of the azaleas blooming. Now it's going to be the leaves turning color. And, maybe they'll have to put the leaf rule in place, Howard, for the Masters.
Yeah, that would be a weird sight to not see all the flowers in bloom. If that was the situation, wouldn't look like the same place.
And they have a method there of making the flowers bloom exactly when they want. We were down there one year in 2004, the year after Mike Weir won, and they gave us a lot of extra access because we were doing sort of a retrospective on Mike. And there's we were on the golf course on the Saturday before the tournament started, so almost a week ahead of the final round. And this little truck pulled off over by the 13th hole and started spraying the bushes, and I thought, what's going on there? And I just asked the guy from Augusta, and he says, well, we like to have the flowers bloom exactly when we want them to. So they can do a lot of special things at that place.
Bob Weeks is with us, who has covered a lot of big-time golf events and has been a guy in the golf business. You might see Bob on the TV working out with with his hair, with your personal trainer and getting your hair tuned up. But Bob, let's talk about golf locally. I mean, we just had this conversation earlier in the show about the 12-week, the new rules of staying inside, isolating for 12 weeks. Golf courses traditionally, between now and the end of April, everything would basically be open in the GTA. What are you hearing from Golf Canada and locally from the Golf Association of Ontario in terms of their handling of this?
So basically, the hand was forced by the government regulations. So golf courses are not essential businesses, so they weren't allowed to operate. Most of them had not opened yet already anyway when the rule came into effect, just because of weather. There might have been one or two here or there. But across the country, there's a little bit of a different rules. Here in Ontario, basically golf courses are shut down. You are allowed, the greens staff is allowed to go out and keep essential services. So you can cut the greens once every 3 or 4 days and cut the fairways and do things like that, but just very essential stuff to kind of protect the asset. It's going to be rough for these golf courses. Not so much maybe the higher end, private clubs, but there's a lot of mom and pop shops out there in smaller places that are really going to feel the pinch. Like, we know there are hundreds of different businesses in this same kind of position, but golf courses have a very short window, right? If everything goes back to normal in November, it doesn't really help the golf courses. They can't operate. So this is a tough time for those operators. And, Golf Canada is trying to support them, help them out with some resources in terms of direction, how to keep your course open, how to keep it going in terms of an asset, not playing. But no one's going to get their golf fix for quite a while here until we get through this.
Yeah, the government's going to have to come up with some way to help seasonal businesses for what you just said. Come November, what's the use of, lifting all the regulations for a lot of seasonal businesses? So over the next few weeks, I'm sure there's a way. If people go to a golf course and you have your distancing and, the way the starter works, there's got to be a way to work around this for golf, you would think.
I've read in British Columbia, the golf courses are still allowed to be open. A lot of them have chosen to close. They don't want to stay open, but there are many that are out there, and they're taking precautions. So, for instance, what they've done, taken all the bunker rakes away, so there's no contact there. You don't take the pin out. You actually raise the cup up, so your ball doesn't drop into the cup. It actually hits the cup and stays out. There's no food service. There's no pro shop. There's no clubhouse. You kind of walk out and you've paid your green fee before, and you go out and you keep your social distancing. However, as one golf official told me, he said, we can't get guys to fix their ball marks. How are we going to expect them to keep apart for 4 hours on a golf course? So there's some pluses and minuses there, but and a lot of people in the States, a lot of golf courses in the U.S. are open and running. I think about 75%, I saw a number yesterday, are still allowing people to play, taking these precautions.
Well, it's funny you said that, because what you just described, I saw my brother sent me something from a course in Phoenix, actually, ironically enough, a place I've been to recently where my buddy has a golf school. And they basically are doing what you described, including raising the cups. Now, someone listening might say, well, what does this matter? Golf's not an essential service, etc. But in this country, not only is it played by millions of people, but it's also, it's an industry like any other, on their, the company that I work with, ClubLink, that's a pretty razor thin bottom line, because, it's not just golfers, it's weddings and banquets and corporate events and all sorts of food and beverage. So even if they open the golf courses for play, the real money to be made and lives, people who are impacted, is inside the golf court, inside the golf clubs.
Here's another aspect. Charities. There's, how many charity golf tournaments are there across the country? There's an estimate that Golf Canada put out that golf raises about $500 million, so $500 million a year for charities through their various golf events across the country, big and small. So there's another aspect of what this industry is doing. It's an $11.3 billion industry in Canada to the GDP. So it's a big industry, and a lot of summer students, jobs get there. There's all sorts of things you can think of. That's not going to happen if these golf courses remain closed.
And that raises an interesting point. So if the clubhouses aren't open and they're not hosting weddings and corporate events, they may be in a position where it's actually more cost effective to stay closed rather than hiring people just for green fees and what have you.
Yeah, I mean, the club that I belong to in Toronto, Weston Golf Club, they've not hired the regular summer staff that they would have. They're on a bare bones staff because there's no members going in there. There's no one eating. There's no one, using the locker room, getting your shoes cleaned, all those kind of things that happen. And that could be the same. I guess there is some savings there. It would be nice if you could be like restaurants where you could order takeout golf or something. That would be a good one.
Freddie, it's interesting. Last night, Bob, we have our sort of men's night at my golf course. We've decided to have it on Zoom. There's about 10 or 11 of us, just talking golf once a week. And Fred, that came up in the conversation that, given that operating costs are a fixed number in terms of maintaining the courses, they actually might do better if they didn't open it all, because then they wouldn't have those costs along with the other losses they were going to have.
No, yeah, something to think about.
Hey, Bob Weeks, we've talked a lot about the way the NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, etc. have handled this crisis. How do you think the PGA Tour, as sort of another major sporting body, how do you think they've handled it, and how do you think this is going to end up in terms of maybe even losing an entire season?
Yeah, they sort of stumbled at the start. 3 weeks ago today, I was at the Players' Championship in Florida, and I was covering the first round. And as the night before was when the NBA pulled the plug, basically on all their games. And Players Championship went ahead of the first round, big galleries, regular golf tournament. Yeah. At noon that day, they said, okay, we're going to continue and we're going to play this event and the next three, but not going to have any galleries. No fans would be allowed to attend. And then by 9 o'clock that night, they canceled the first four. So they kind of stumbled out of the gate. And right now they're sort of canceling tournaments in blocks of 4. So we're expecting that this week they'll probably cancel 4 more, or at least 2 more. And one of those is likely to be the RBC Canadian Open, which is scheduled for June 11th, I think, 11 to 14 here in Toronto at St. George's Golf and Country Club. I mean, they're like everybody else. They're trying to find out if there's any kind of daylight at the end of this, when you could start up. But I think they're sort of operating in a vacuum. I know I talked to Commissioner Jay Monahan, and he said, all the sports leagues are kind of talking to each other. They're trying to work on exactly what kind of a picture you could play. As we were saying with public golf, the PGA Tour is probably something you could do fairly safely if under the right terms, if you didn't have any fans. But I'm not sure if sponsors would want that, or what the costs would be involved in that. I know, for instance, the preparations for the RBC Canadian Open are on hold because they can't build grandstands. That's in the non-essential service. They can't even groom the golf course. There's all sorts of that aspect. But the PGA Tour, I know, is trying to do everything they can to make these tournaments, get them up and running. But it seems they're as stuck as every other sports league.
What are the athletes doing, Bob? Or do you know, like NHL players are told not to go to rinks and have little private workouts, just stay home like everyone else has been asked to do. In a situation like that, would like Tiger Woods have access to a whole golf course to go out and keep his game sharp?
Well, Tiger Woods is pretty lucky. He's got a 3-hole golf course of his own on his own property. Right. So he could probably go
Tiger's fine. Although, Bob, before you answer, I saw some Instagram stuff where Tiger's got a simulator in his house.
I was just going to say, a lot of guys have simulators in their houses. I know Mike Weir has a simulator. A bunch of the other guys. I was talking to Adam Hadwin this week, who's the top ranked Canadian in the world, and he's at his in-laws, and he as soon as he got in there, he ordered a hitting net for the garage. Yeah. But some of these guys have been out on the golf course. A few of them. Corey Connors told me that early on, when in the shutdown, he kind of went out. His golf course was still open, but it's been closed now. But there's still a couple of little minor league professional golf tours, believe it or not, playing in Phoenix. There's a tour called the Outlaw Tour. Yeah, that's still going on. So it's most of the players though have kind of shut it down. They're trying to keep up with their fitness, and they're working in terms of hitting into nets or simulators.
Now you mentioned Mike Weir. A lot of Canadian golf fans, of course, one of the biggest thrills of our lives was watching Weir win the Masters in 2003 and get the jacket from Tiger Woods. I only have 2 pictures of sports memorabilia, and that's one of them. Mike Weir actually, a lot of people are like, whatever happened? What's happened to Mike? And it's too bad because he's been playing some pretty good golf this last fall and winter on some secondary tours. He got a good finish in the Corn Ferry event, but he was about to become eligible for the Senior Tour or PGA Tour Champions. What did you just pivot from this crisis for a second? Did you see that or hear from him about the state of his game? And did I would expect he'd have a pretty good Senior Tour career.
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with Mike over the last couple of months, and he's been working very, very hard. His game really fell off. He had some injuries. He's been battling a lot of different things, but went through a divorce and a number of personal issues. But really, in the last year or so, his game has turned the corner. He's healthy. He's remained fit. I don't know how, but he's remained committed to it because a lesser man would have given up, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And May 12th, he'll turn 50, and he was hoping, of course, to join the Champions Tour. That'll be delayed now. But I do think, like you, Howard, I think when he gets out there, I think he can play with these guys. It's tough when you're 49 and you're giving up, 80 or 75 yards off the tee to these young guys. It's lucky he has an all-world short game. But, I think when he gets out there, he'll do pretty well. He did have I will point out, he had some pretty bad news this week. His partner, a gal by the name of Michelle Money, they basically lived together. And so her daughter was skateboarding, fell, hit her head, fractured her skull, had some brain damage, was on life support in an ICU in Utah.
Oh, my God.
Terrible, terrible situation. I mean, you talk about what's going on with coronavirus. There's other accidents and other people in hospitals for this situation right now. But it appears it's good news at the moment from the last that I talked to Mike's family.
Well, I'll just quickly say, if Canadian athletes or Canadian sports fans, there's a guy to cheer for, Mike Weir, because he's really got as you said, a lesser athlete would have given it up years ago. So, he got all the money he'd ever need, and the fact that he just keeps trying is something to be proud of. Like I said, I really like the guy. I've only met him a few times, but I really like the fact that he didn't give up, and golf's a crappy game. I mean, it's a tough game, and it beats you down, and it's easy to walk away.
It's, he is a guy who's, I think, at first was a little uncomfortable, let's say in the last 4 or 5 years, sort of taking this position as like a Gretzky, like an icon of his sport. All these young guys who were out on the tour now, the Adam Hadwins and the Mackenzie Hughes and Corey Connor, all these Canadians, they look up. He was the guy who showed them that all this kind of stuff was possible. And Mike was a little uncomfortable reaching out to them. He wanted them to reach the other way if they wanted advice. But now he's kind of assumed this role as kind of a mentor for them all. He realizes that, probably the best days of his career are behind him. So now he can go out and enjoy himself, have fun, and maybe help the next generation come along and work with the fans a little bit more as well.
Bob, looking forward, last week there was a rumor, maybe it was more than a rumor, that Tiger and Phil would get together for a little head-to-head match with one cameraman or two cameramen. Did you hear about that? And do you think that's logistically sensible, so to speak?
Yeah, I did. They so Tiger and Phil played a match November 2018 in Vegas for $9 million, and it was made for television. Actually, it was made for pay-per-view. So they were trying to resurrect that over the last little while, and Phil essentially has said, let's see if we can do this now, because we're sitting watching reruns of sporting events. A live new sporting event would be something great. And there was a rumor that Peyton Manning was going to team up with Phil, and Tom Brady was going to play alongside Tiger. I don't know where it's gone from there. Like, all we know is that this is something that's being considered in Florida at some point soon, but soon could be, who knows what soon is right now, but I think it would be kind of, even though the last one was terrible golf,
it was horrible.
I would be excited to watch anything live sports right now.
You know what would be good? I'm sorry. You know what might be good about that? If those guys did that, put on that show and practice social distancing or physical distancing, it might be a good example to the sport and to people that it can be done, and this is the way you should do it if the course is open. So
yeah. I agree 100%. I mean, why not use this as an example of what we can do?
Well, I was going to say that it would be great modeling behavior, and of course, if they raised all the money for charity, etc. But that last match was horrible, and I'm a super Tiger fan. I mean, the best part about that match was getting to watch them warm up. Speaking of televised golf, golfers are funny, because I don't know about you, Bobby, but I've been watching, Sunday afternoons, I've been watching reruns of golf tournaments. But come next week, And I've said this recently on my golf podcast. I absolutely guarantee, and correct me if I'm wrong, that CBS will be rerunning at least the Sunday Masters from last year. What do you think?
I'm pretty sure TSN is going to be showing that as well. From what I understand, I think there's going to be a plethora of final rounds being shown. Augusta's a little tight with what they release and how much they release. They like to control a lot of stuff, so I'm not sure you'll see all 4 rounds last year. But man, being there to see Tiger last year win that, if there's one thing I've learned about covering Tiger Woods over his career, and I think I've seen him win 11 or 12 of his 15 majors.
Wow.
It's just never underestimate the guy, what the guy's capable of, winning a US Open on a broken leg, or, I don't know, coming back from what he did at all that surgery and the back surgeries and winning again. It was a pretty remarkable moment last year.
Well, tell me, because I was on the couch like a lot of Canadian golf fans, and I remember saying to my girlfriend, she was going to go for the day, and I said to her, she was asking me about Tiger Woods. I said, let me just say this. If Tiger Woods wins today, I will be crying. So where were you when he finally raised his hands in the air and won his 15th major?
And did you cry, Bob?
And did you cry?
I didn't cry, but I was pretty emotional about it. So if you remember last year, they moved the tee times up. It was teeing
Right.
off in the morning.
Yep.
Which is unusual. So on TSN, we have a set that's on the par 3 golf course, and we had to go live right after essentially the last putt drop. So I was actually sitting on a set with James Duthie and David Hearn watching that on a television that was about literally the size of a computer screen, unfortunately. So it wasn't the most memorable moment that I've had watching the Masters finals, but we went on air right after. But, we came over earlier in the day and walked a couple of holes with him early on when they're rounds, and you could kind of see from his eyes and from the way he was walking that he kind of knew. I don't know if he knew he was going to win, but I knew he was going to be in the hunt somewhere down the line. And then things just happened, right? All those guys hit it in the ball. 4 of the last 6 players hit the ball in the water on the 12th hole, and suddenly Tiger Woods walks to the 13th tee and he's in the lead, or tied for the lead. And the fans at Augusta were just rabid. It was unbelievable to watch the atmosphere that was out there, and you could feel it pulsing through it. You could feel the crowd at Augusta National more than any course in the world, but this day was really special.
Well, if you watch the CBS coverage as I did, Nick Faldo and Jim Nantz, both of them were quite emotional in that post-Butler cabin time, and they had extra time. They interviewed Tiger, but I've never seen Nance like that. In fact, actually, it's not true. The only other time I've seen Nance like that is when Fred Couples won the Masters in '92 because they were college roommates.
Right. It's I think it grabbed a lot of people, and I think if you watching the replay of Tiger when he thrusts his arms in the air and then he walks up and he hugs his son and his mother and his daughter, you could tell that this was more than emotional for him. I mean, this was a real moment in his life, because I don't think he ever really probably thought that he was going to come back and win another major like this. So emotional for a lot of people on a lot of different levels.
Hey, Bob Weeks, thank you very much. We hope to talk to you again. We got to have you back on Swing Thoughts. That was great. And all the best to you and your family. Score Golf Magazine, and, of course, watch Bob on TSN. And you do have a TSN. Don't you and Zucchino do a podcast or something?
We have a TV show called Golf Talk Canada that goes on
Right.
a half-hour show. We're doing it on a podcast right now as well. So, and we have a radio show Saturday mornings as well. So lots of golf talk. Not much being played, but lots of golf talk.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bobby. We really appreciate it. There you go. It's time to take a quick break. It's Humble and Fred Radio live on Canada's Comedy Superstation, Funny 820, and at humbleandfredradio.com.
Swim out past the breaker, watch the world die. We can live beside the ocean, leave the fire behind.
lot of stuff going on in the world. And here we are, Humble and Fred, the Humble and Fred show. I don't know what we're doing. We're just doing. People keep asking me, you guys still doing your show? Which, leads me to believe they don't listen, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But we're still doing it,
Yes, we are. And, trying to come up with content every day. Funny little asides and, to help people through this world crisis.
Oh, yeah, we are. I mean, already this morning we've talked about crispy tofu.
Uh-huh.
We had Dan Duran fumble through some weather. We had Tony Clement, Minister of Health for Ontario. The Honourable, by the way.
Yes, still honourable after all these years.
After all he's been through. And, of course, just now, the editor of Score Golf magazine. Very fine fellow, Bob Weeks. Do you know I once wrote an article for Score Golf? Did you know that?
Ah, very nice.
Yep. It was 25 years ago at the beginning of the Golf Channel. For a golf fan, I found that there was this 24-hour golf thing. I was like so enamored with it, as you can imagine. I approached Bob and I said, I've been watching all these infomercials on the Golf Channel. I'd like to write an article about some of the guys that are, with their funny little gadgets and stuff. And so I went all the way to Arkansas and I spent some time with one of the people that had an infomercial and I wrote an article about it. And that was my big golf magazine career.
I think I remember reading that. It was quite clever.
I don't know. Was it?
Yeah, and by the way,
yes,
I was trying to work on a little surprise for you. I got you entry into the Wuhan Open, but I couldn't get you a flight.
Oh,
so couldn't get you a flight.
Oh,
yet.
thank you, Fred.
Yeah,
I was going to take Phil as my caddy. Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
yeah. They're going ahead with the Wuhan Open. Oh,
yeah.
It's just they're looking for players. That's all.
Bob Weeks brought up an interesting point. I think that forget just golf, but by the time, I don't know, let's say come July or August, there begins to be a sort of reintegration, we'll call it, of not just all of us, but all those sports. So imagine all that stuff happening, baseball, the beginning of football, the end of basketball, the end of hockey, and the beginning. There's going to be 2 or 3 months where everything's happening all the time, every week.
I know. I got a giggle out of that. Oh, yeah, I giggled. Isn't it already a lot of people are complaining about having to hunker down and sit around and do nothing but watch television. So then everything will be lifted. All those events will happen.
Yeah.
And as you say, we won't want to leave the house. We'll all stay inside and watch television.
I promise you, if they have 4 majors in golf in a row, I'll be even more isolated than I am now.
Well, I think that's a fabulous idea, by the way. Don't you think? I mean, as a one-off, 4 in a row, week after week, it would be great.
Phil, before we continue, let's see. What do we need Fred to do? By the way, if Bob Weeks, of course, had been in our studio during the interview, the Fizz Man would sneak down the stairs, and he would get a beautiful palm of pasta lasagna for our guests. Mm-hmm. Do you like lasagna, Phil?
I love lasagna.
Well, get you one. Get you one from Palma Pasta. Or go to Palma's Kitchen, still open in Mississauga. Great food, great pastas, lasagnas, fresh made. And as both of us have said a few times, like for a medium lasagna, I think it's under $13 or around that. You couldn't make it for that price, and your version would suck. Palma Pasta, Palma's Kitchen. Go check it out, Fred Man.
Yes, the Retirement Sherpa was on the show yesterday, and, like everybody else, sort of, trying to figure this all out. And if you need advice on how you might want to figure it out, the Sherpa would be the guy to talk to. As he displayed yesterday, very calm, very measured, very logical. Tim is a portfolio manager, and Raymond James is a member of the Canadian Investors Protection Fund. these are crazy times. Again, yesterday, I think the stock market here in Toronto was down about 500 points, a similar percentage in the United States. We're very volatile. We're all trying to figure this out. But as Tim said yesterday, the only way to look at it is opportunity. There are opportunities there. And if you're not sure what that means or how you would go about pursuing those opportunities, again, retirementsherpa.ca. That's how to get a hold of Tim. And he'll give you a lot of the answers you might be looking for.
And, given his recent surgery, he's been rebuilt even better and more delightful than before. If you're staying at home like a lot of people, everyone that's been on our show the last few weeks has been on Zoom, and a lot of people around North America in the same situation. Telcos are experiencing a huge surge in network, so GigSky's got the answer. Grab some supplemental data through GigSky and make staying connected even easier. I mean, we all know about global travel and how GigSky can make that better. But let's say you're at home working, but your kids are also at home, talking to their kids. I was talking to some dads last night, and they said, what a lot of their younger kids, like teenagers, are doing, Fred, is they just start a Zoom meeting. And they're not even like actively engaged with one another so much as it's sort of just on while they're going about their business. So if you're a parent trying to do your business, get GigSky, grab the extra data straight from your device. That way you don't have to worry about the network you've got going in your house. So give it a shout, enter free 10 and checkout, I say, to get the data, gigsky.com or go to humbleandfredradio.com. Why, look, that little angel boy from Barrie, Ontario. Hello, KJ Preston.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Oh, very good, thanks.
Fred, you remember KJ? Look at him with his little Blue Jay baseball cap on.
Got his Blue Jay baseball cap on. He's got pictures of the kids over his shoulder.
That's right.
He's hunkered down in Barrie, Ontario, where, you want to talk about seasonal. Even a city like Barrie, look at the seasonal traffic it gets and how that city will be affected this summer.
Well, KJ, you can speak to that. You think about all the people going to Barrie on their way north of Barrie, whether it's skiing or the cottage country. Mm-hmm. It's going to affect, as Freddie says, the whole city.
Oh yeah, tourism's going for crap, right? But the drive home will be good on Friday. Yes.
Yeah, hey KJ, just get a little closer to that computer speaker. Is that what you're using? Your computer microphone?
It is my phone.
Oh, okay, that's fine. KJ from Clear Air.
I can do this.
Yeah, from Clear Air Solutions. They do normally a lot of mold remediation, asbestos ventilation cleaning, but recently, Ken, you've been doing a lot of work with the Aegis Microbe Shield, and I've been trying to explain it. But I don't think I'm doing a great job.
That's okay. You're doing a great job, bud.
No. Can you explain what it does and how it disinfects?
Hold on, dogs are freaking out. So the Aegis Microbe Shield, it is an antimicrobial, not a disinfectant, it's not a cleaner. It is a long-lasting 1-year antimicrobial that we apply to many surfaces, touch surfaces, that when it comes in contact with microbes, viruses, germs, or bacteria, it pops them and kills them.
Okay, so if somebody has...
And that lasts for a year?
It lasts for a year, yes.
Wow.
And when somebody has that done to their home or their office or their home office, you guys come in. How long does the process take?
It depends, obviously, on the size of the building, but we've gotten super efficient at it. We can go in and do. We did a 25,000 square foot software company in Brampton. Not this past weekend, weekend before. We did that. It took us 12 hours with 6 people, but it's a software company, so every computer, every keyboard, every mouse, every desk. It was huge, but the average business, we can go in and out within, I'm going to say 48 hours and be completely done, and they can get back in there and people can go to work safely.
Nice.
Yeah.
What great piece of mind for for employees too. Like, I mean, if whether it's essential or not, if you have to go to work and have to go to that facility, that provides great peace of mind for the people working there.
Well, it does, and it shows that their work is doing their due diligence and doing everything possible to minimize the risk to the people who are still having to come in and work during this time, right?
Yeah. I've known Kenny for a few years. We do some stand-up together. We've produced some shows together. And I know that you're not quite Howie Mandel level in terms of germaphobe, but you're germ aware.
I am very germ aware. And when you start thinking about it, you get even more Howie Mandelish.
So has this been like just among on top of everything else for you? It's got to be freaking you out personally.
Yeah, it is. I was actually at on site yesterday with some people. They're talking about how it is, and I said, "This is how I want the world to be. Don't shake hands. Don't stand.
Don't get close to Ken.
Public bathroom." It's exactly what I wanted.
If somebody
Are you going to grocery stores or anything like that, Ken? Or
well, we're lucky enough that we have Zehrs. They do the pick, and they pick your groceries and you pick them up. They load them in your car, and then I make my wife hose them down outside and Lysol wipe them. And because who picked it? Who put it in the truck? Who picked it at the grocery store and put it in the bag? Who touched the bags? Like,
I know it goes on and on and on. I know we've had that discussion in this household as well.
I had some fruit and vegetables delivered yesterday, and just the process was very simple. I mean, if you can get into one of these, whether it's Corner Shop or any of the other online ordering things, the problem is now waiting 72 hours or, a lot of the shoppers are occupied. But back to your situation, Clear Air Solutions. If somebody wants you to come in and use the Aegis microbe, where is it here? Shield.
Aegis.
Aegis. Is it Aegis?
Aegis.
Okay. See, I've even been saying that wrong. How do they get a hold of you, and how backed up are you? I'm talking about in terms of the Aegis solution.
Well, we're actually pretty good because a lot of people are not working right now, and I'm able to put them to work. I'm a certified trainer. I can train them how to do it, give them the proper PPE, and get people out there doing things. We're busy. It's busy. It's good, but there's not a huge long wait because of the amount of people that need to work. And because of you guys and your show, we actually have been doing police stations in Eastern Ontario, including Coburg, the police chief there, very nice, and Port Hope as well.
Amazing. Well, we're happy to help you, and we appreciate your support of this program. Clear Air Solutions. What's the website there, Kenneth?
ClearAirSolutions.com, and you can find us on Facebook as well.
All right.
And I will give a shout out to Paul, the police chief in Coburg, who is a huge Humble and Fred fan, heard me on your show, and called us right away to do the treatment for his station and squad cars and his officers.
And that's the way it works. Fantastic.
Well, we certainly appreciate it, and give our best to Paul. And so that's Port Colborne. You're doing Port Hope. There could be others. If you need Ken's business, or as Ken just said, there are some people out of work, and this might be a nice way to get some extra money. You're being completely trained, as well being put to work, helping others make their home and offices more prepared for something.
Reduce the risk.
Thank you very much. You see, what I just did is ran out. I just ran out of steam there.
Sorry, buddy. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Kenny, take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, bud. Bye, Fred.
I'll see you, pal. I wonder if Ken does 10 or 15 minutes while he's doing a place, just stand in the middle of the room and do, 10, 15 stand up.
Oh, yeah.
You get double whammy, right?
It's funny you say that. There's so many comics, doing like, live streaming shows, or Sal said that I should do that. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that.
Why?
Well, why don't I want to stand here to nobody for 10 minutes and just doing my act? No, thanks. But a lot of people are doing it.
That would be tough.
Well, they don't have this.
Well, the thing is, so much of that is a feel too. I think if you're a super famous comic, there's a little bit of license there. People are caught up in the fact that, whoever it might be. But other than that, like with no applause or no reaction, it would be tough.
Well, I was going to say, though, we have this outlet every day. A lot of those people, a lot of performers, we're lucky in so many ways that we literally were set up to do this. You could have been at home for years for us doing this. Fizzy could have been in his basement family storage, a long time ago. For a lot of radio broadcasters, this is all brand new for them. And a lot of performers, comics and such, with no outlet, I understand why they're doing live streaming, and that's great. But, I get to come downstairs just like I always have for the last 3.5 years, talk to you, do this, and we go, and we're done.
Well, that's the key for us, is the fact that you live at the main studio. So it's not like, you're sort of remote as well. I mean, you're at master control, which really helps us. Because just think, if that was in a different situation, what would our situation? It would be more difficult to do this if you weren't where you are.
Well, because if we were where we used to be, you could stay in Brampton, but I would have to go there. Phil could still be where he is. But the point is, we like doing it. We're going to do another show for the 3rd week in a row. You still fine for Friday?
Sure, why not?
And Fizzy, you will be hosting the Best of Humble and Fred on Funny 820, 7 a.m. tomorrow morning.
That's right. And so for folks who miss comedians and comedy clubs, I have a couple comedians this weekend.
And who would that be, little fizzballs?
I have Steve Patterson tomorrow, and then on the weekend, Helder Broom.
Could you do me a favor? Because Steve Patterson's a buddy. I see him on Twitter all the time. And if you remind me, I'll send him a note and say, hey, I think his Twitter handle is @Patterballs. I'll let him know that he's going to be one of our featured guests, and he'll be thrilled. And he'll tweet it out, and all people will know that stuff.
Absolutely.
The Twitter, Phil.
The Twitter.
That's Patterballs. That's funny. When I was a kid, some people used to call me Patterbum.
Patterbum.
Oh, yeah. There's lots of ways to play with the Patterson name. Patterbum, Patterballs,
Yeah.
Lends
Pitter
itself.
patter.
Yeah.
At least you're in Howie the Turtle. So you guys, you were talking about your trip yesterday, basically from Brampton into the city, up into Scarborough, over to Georgetown. And just like me, you observe the traffic is so light. It's like I describe it as it's like always Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon. There's just very few cars on the road. And I was up near your place yesterday. On the way home, I said to Rachel, let's stop. I said, you want to see where Fred lives? Let me go say hi, doing those things where you're in the house and we're waving. And I pull up to your, palatial estate, and no one's home. I'm sitting there in the driveway.
We were out and about, like you were.
Yeah. And ran into neighbor John, who is growing some kind of crazy beard, man.
Yeah, he looks like a... Yeah, he's it's the big sort of grayish beard. He looks like a backwoodsman or something, doesn't he?
You kids wouldn't remember this reference, but he looks like Grizzly Adams.
Yes, Grizzly Adams, that type of thing. Exactly. That's too bad I missed you. But I was doing the same thing. I went and had a parking lot reunion with my son, where he stood way back as I said hello to him. Very hard not to hug the ones you love. And then I went over to a buddy's place, drove up in front of his house, and they stood on the porch, and we were about 30 feet away, yelling back and forth, hello, how are you? How are you getting along? And then I capped it off at my daughter's place, watching my grandson shoot baskets from a distance.
No.
So
that had to be the top. Of the three of them, because I thought that too. There's in the Glassman family, it's almost daily now. Should we, get Charlie to come home from New York? And it's, a lot of it is just, I don't know. I said to Rachel last night, I don't know what to do, because I don't want to be the dad, 2 months from now, if she should get really sick, that should I have convinced her? And anyway, but I think about of not being able to hug my children, but in your case, not being able to hug your grandchildren. I think that's got to be the toughest of it all.
And a couple of times, she's 4, so a couple of times she goes to come close to you forgetting, and then she has to be reminded. And they seem to be adjusting well and understanding, but you just have to wonder long term or even short term what's going on in their heads, because we never had to experience this as kids.
Yeah.
Something out of a freaking horror movie. I mean, really, it's bizarre.
I don't know if they did that in Scarborough in the 60s, and I don't remember it in Moose Jaw. But, you see those old TV shows where kids in the early 60s during the Cuban Missile Crisis were practicing. These are school kids practicing sitting under the desks at their school in case of a nuclear attack.
No, we never did that in Scarborough. I vividly remember that time, though, because my parents were upset, and I remember the conversation around the dinner table. But we didn't do that at school. We didn't have the drills in case of a nuclear attack or whatever it would have been at that time.
I guess my point is, generations of kids have adapted and have been under stress. We talked earlier in the week, I think, about, what did we tell our children on the day the planes hit the towers? And so generations of people have endured, and I think that's a great takeaway for people that, Tony Clement said there will be a time when we recover. It may be more of a moving, moment. You won't know the exact time. The all clear won't be sounded, but your children those kids will adapt and they'll be fine.
I pick out London because, there are other places as well, but can you imagine being a 6 or 7 year old in London during the war when bombs were dropping on the city? What kind of terror is that for a child? How do you explain that to your child? Those big, unsettling explosion sounds are people trying to kill us with bombs. You just can't imagine what that may have done to people for the rest of their life. That was probably never diagnosed, like so much of is diagnosed nowadays that wasn't in years gone by.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it was interesting hearing Tony talk historically about the prime minister after World War II defeating Churchill and trying a campaign of austerity and doing what we're doing, social, a social discord. And then at some point he's just like, we got a party here. We'll do a little podcast extra. Fizzy, do your thing here as we say goodbye.
This episode of Humble and Fred Radio was brought to you by FYI Music News, The Retirement Sherpa, Gig Sky, The Chambers Plan, Palma Pasta, and CDN Technologies. We broadcast to the planet remotely from the worldwide headquarters of the Humble and Fred Show. More Humble and Fred live and best ofs tomorrow and online at humbleandfredradio.com.
I wanted love, I needed love, most of all.
Phil, I don't know if you heard that, but you hit that post, baby.
That is awesome.
You did. It was great. Just as you said, Humble and Fred Radio, boom, they started singing. Just like a little radio guy.
Almost as if I was there.
Yeah, very nice. What a difference, though. You were talking about your little trip yesterday. What a difference getting out of the house. We did the same thing. We left the house at about noon, GFR and I, and didn't get back till I think after 3. And it wasn't just about being outside and in the nature, but it was just nice to go somewhere. And you said about, well, I don't know if we're supposed to be driving. I would think that driving with, just yourself, going out in the world, I don't see how that can be a problem.
Yeah, but I read something, recently about the advice is stay at home. Don't even take leisurely trips or.
But why?
Or something. I don't know, Howard. Just in case somewhere along the line you get out of your car. I don't know.
They're talking about how the virus can survive on surfaces like metal and stuff. So, who knows if someone walks around and they happen to be a patient and they cough on your car handle, right?
Oh, okay.
Your car door.
Well, I'm not going near anyone coughing on my car handle. On Facebook, we're getting some good reaction. Here's Mark Finn says, you guys are doing a great service for those of us who are still on the road providing essential services. Keep it up. So there's that.
Very nice.
There were a couple other things, too. Wayne Gao says, thanks for all the show recommendations. You've brought some gems to my attention I never would have thought watching, like Norseman, which I loved. So weird. And most recently, Tiger King. The one he recommends, by the way, is something called Brockmire, starring Hank Azaria. It's about a baseball play-by-play guy. Have you heard of it, Fred?
What's that called? I want to write that down.
Brockmire, Brockmire. I watched, it got huge ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, but it's about a guy who is a baseball play-by-play guy who freaks out on the air and is fired because of his obscenity-laced tirade and the determination to become a big league broadcaster once again. So that sounds cool. It also features Joe Buck and Bob Costas and others in reoccurring roles taking part. He says it's on Crave TV, so you can check that
Crave,
out.
Okay.
Yep.
I will check. I'm 4 episodes now into The Outsider, which is really weird.
Is The Outsider a Netflix one or an HBO one?
I'm watching it on Crave, but it's a Stephen King thing.
Yeah.
With what's his head from? Look at that. What's the matter with me?
Jason Bateman.
Jason Bateman from Ozark. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't usually like that stuff, but this, I don't know. I'm sticking with it.
Okay. I started watching something on Rachel's recommend. It's just a 4-part series. It's about the Hasidic, community in New York and Brooklyn, and about a young woman, based on a true story, about a young woman that, gets away from the community. I just watched the first episode last night, and even as a Jewish guy, I said to her at bedtime, I'm like, it's like watching a cult. It really is. It's like they're no different than, and I say this respectfully, no different than any Scientology or Catholic, Baptist, Christian right wing. I mean, it's all just so bizarre to me, but it's fascinating. It's well done. Phil, what are you watching?
Well, I just saw my Netflix account. It's suggesting that I watch Babylon Berlin, I believe.
Yes, I would. You would love it.
I'm starting on that. I finished watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel season 2 because I watched it out of order. So 3, 1, 2.
Phil.
Yeah, it's awesome. And the Rachel, what's her face? Who's the star there?
Yeah.
Rachel Brosnahan.
Well, and the guy that plays Lenny Bruce, I've told you, Phil, is from Hamilton.
Yes. Oh, and he's very witty. I love that. Lots of F words.
On Ozark, I was talking to my good friend Darren yesterday, and he absolutely couldn't believe that I wasn't impressed with the first 2 episodes of Ozark. And I said, I don't know. It didn't pull me in, and nothing was happening. What are you talking about?
I know.
It was fantastic. I found it compelling. And I said, I don't know. Like anything else, the subjective word, but maybe on the heels, as I said, of Tiger King, everything else seems flat.
That's exactly what happened to me. I watched Tiger King. I was so blown away by how bizarre it was. Set sort of similar, bunch of rednecks walking around being rednecks, that when you watch a dramatic version of something, like that, it was flat. And we've gotten up to episode 6, I think. We're not sure. But it got better. I will say Darren's right that about episode 4 or 5, it does start to ramp up a bit, but it's just it was flat. The first 2 episodes, I wasn't gonna go back to it because there's so much other stuff I want to watch.
Well, that's what I mean. I watched the first 2, and now I've started watching something else.
Yeah,
and believe me, I'm gonna finish it, but at the same time, I don't know.
So
Not
that's
what I thought.
Anyway. So The Outsider, it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Here's somebody. Says, hi, Humble Fred and Phil. I'm a loyal Hundy P or lifer. I like that. I literally listen every day on the Spotify podcast due to my schedule, so never get the opportunity to engage in the live broadcast. I love all your content and the guests you bring on the show. It's the best shit out there. I'm wondering, he says, if it's possible that you invite Richard Surrett to join the podcast extra. I think it would be must-listen content if you guys could talk to him unfiltered. Sorry I can't send you a $500 check, but I hope you still consider my suggestion, Dave C.
Shanka, Dave.
Thank you.
That's a nice note, but it gets back to what I said yesterday. Like, unfiltered, what is that? We're not going to change his mind in 20 minutes. He knows how we feel. We know what he thinks. You know what I mean? Like, what would that be exactly?
I don't know if it's unfiltered, meaning, he wants to hear us swear or whatever. But, and you brought this up before the show, like I don't know. We have never, our rating, I use ratings, but our rankings are the highest they've been for our podcast in a very long time. I know I'm not, listen, I'm not the president, so I can talk about ratings. And that's not coming from the radio audience. I mean, I know, the only guy that I talk to regularly that loves listening to us live is Anthony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, we often say that through this, in some ways, it's going to change society. It's going to change the way we live, think. And even yesterday, I saw a report on the news. They showed infrared, or whatever you call it, photos of the Earth from space, and how this is going to actually help the environment on a lot of levels. So, I mean, a lot to think about going forward. It may even change maybe the way we do the show going forward. Is it because of the shows we've put on, or the fact that we have access to more audience because people are doing less? Who knows?
That is true.
Something to think about.
Now that people are isolating and spending the hour each way they were commuting, where they might have listened to us live, pardon me, they've got those couple hours now to listen to the show maybe a little bit longer as a podcast than they might have had before. But you're right. Not only is this everything else in society, but the way people broadcast. Like, think about, you've used this term, I have, about the bricks and mortar needed to house an actual office. What about radio stations? They got all these morning shows and talk shows in little tiny studios in their houses, and the the sound is fine. No,
I know. That's what I said. Down the road, I'll tell you, in not too distant future, there's going to be a lot of office buildings turned into condos. You watch.
But what is a radio? Go ahead, finish your point.
No. I said because, again, going through this experience, it's just what you said. It's proving to so many people and so many businesses that, yeah, you can function remotely at a much reduced cost, I would imagine.
Well, think about what we have in this studio, and it's only slightly paneled, soundproofing, whatever. The need to go to a radio station in a soundproof studio, that it might have been important at one time, but now people are, like, we've had a bunch of different people on this week with varying good microphones, but I think people accept it now as just part of the reality / charm of this system, that sometimes it's studio quality and sometimes it's a guy talking into a phone.
Yeah, it's all about the content.
It's the content. Like this content we're doing now. Oh,
we're doing content about content.
Yes, we are.
That's cool.
Well, all right, fellas, we're doing the podcast extra week 3. Fizzy, send me that note about Steve Patterson. I'll tweet out that we're just, what day is it going to be there, pal?
It should be tomorrow morning, 7:30.
All right, so I will let him know, to let all his fans know that he is on the Best of Humble and Fred, and Fred and I will be with you all tomorrow at some time, all right?
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.